I heard the sickening pop before I felt the pain. My older brother James had twisted my arm behind my back because I'd refused to let him borrow my laptop again. Last time he borrowed it, he'd sold it for gambling money. Stop being so dramatic, Emily, Mom sighed as I clutched my right shoulder, tears streaming down my face. James was just playing around. You know how brothers are. But James, 24, wasn't just playing. At 17, I was tired of being his punching bag, tired of the excuses, tired of Mom pretending this was normal sibling behavior. This time, though, there was no hiding it. My shoulder was clearly dislocated, hanging at an awkward angle that made even Mom pause. Fine, she muttered, grabbing her car keys. Let's go to the ER. But remember, it was an accident. We don't need people getting the wrong idea about our family. James smirked from the couch, already back to scrolling through his phone. Sorry, sis, he called out, not sounding sorry at all. You should have just given me the laptop. The drive to Memorial Hospital was tense. Mom rehearsed the story with me. You were wrestling, things got a bit rough. But it was all in fun, right, Emily? I stayed silent, focusing on keeping my arm still as every bump in the road sent shockwaves of pain through my shoulder. This was the third time in 8 months I'd felt this particular pain, but the first time Mom had agreed to take me to the hospital. Usually she'd just give me ice and tell me to tough it out. The emergency room was busy, but a dislocated shoulder apparently warranted prompt attention. A nurse called me back while Mom was still filling out paperwork. She introduced herself as Jenny and helped me change into a gown. Can you tell me how this happened? She asked, her eyes kind but observant. Before I could answer, Mom burst into the room. Oh, just typical sibling roughhousing, she said with a forced laugh. Her brother doesn't know his own strength sometimes. Jenny's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. She took my vitals and noted them in my chart, then said Dr. Andrews would be in shortly. Dr. Andrews was younger than I expected, maybe in his mid-30s, with glasses and a calm demeanor. He sat down at the computer and began reviewing my file. I watched as his brow furrowed, his fingers clicking through screen after screen. I see you've been here before, he said carefully. Multiple times, in fact. 3 visits to urgent care for shoulder injuries in the past 8 months, plus 2 ER visits for a sprained wrist and bruised ribs. Mom shifted in her chair. Emily's very active. She does sports. Which sports? Dr. Andrews asked, looking directly at me. I don't play sports, I admitted, avoiding Mom's warning glare. Dr. Andrews nodded, making a note in my file. I'd like to examine your shoulder now. Mrs. Parker, would you mind stepping out for a moment? Hospital protocol for examining teenage patients. That's ridiculous, Mom protested. I'm her mother. Nevertheless, it's our policy, he said firmly. The nurse will show you to the waiting area. Once Mom was gone, Dr. Andrews' whole demeanor changed. Emily, he said gently, I need you to be honest with me. These injuries, they're not from roughhousing, are they? Something in his voice, in the way he looked at me like he actually saw me, broke through the wall I built around my fear. My brother James, I whispered. He gets angry, takes things, when I say no. Dr. Andrews nodded, his face grave. How long has this been happening? Since Dad died 3 years ago, I said, the words tumbling out. Mom says he's just grieving, that he doesn't mean it. But today, my laptop. I need it for school, and he wanted to take it, and when I said no. He dislocated your shoulder, Dr. Andrews finished. He began examining my injury with careful hands. Emily, this pattern of injuries isn't normal. This isn't what loving siblings do to each other, no matter what your mom says. I know, I said, my voice barely audible. But Mom won't listen. She says family problems should stay in the family. Dr. Andrews looked me straight in the eyes. This isn't just a family problem anymore. This is abuse, and as a doctor, I have a legal obligation to report it. But more than that, I want to help you. Will you let me? For the first time in 3 years, someone was offering real help, not just excuses or band-aid solutions. I looked at the door, thinking of Mom in the waiting room with her ready explanations and James at home, probably already planning his next borrowing scheme. I took a deep breath, winced at the pain, and nodded. Yes, I said, please help me. Dr. Andrews worked quickly after that. While he prepared to reset my shoulder, he had Nurse Jenny bring in a social worker named Ms. Torres. The pain medication they gave me made everything feel slightly surreal, but it couldn't dull the relief of finally telling someone the truth. Your brother has a documented history of violent behavior, Ms. Torres said, consulting her tablet. 2 assault charges that were dropped, and a restraining order from an ex-girlfriend. I hadn't known about the restraining order, but I wasn't surprised. James had always been good at making others fear him while convincing our mom he was the victim. Mom will never believe me, I said, wincing as Dr. Andrews began the procedure to reset my shoulder. She'll say I'm trying to ruin James's life. 1, 2, 3, Dr. Andrews counted, then manipulated my arm. There was another pop, and suddenly my shoulder was back in place. The relief was immediate, though a deep ache remained. Your mother's belief isn't required, Ms. Torres explained while Dr. Andrews secured my arm in a sling. The evidence of repeated injuries, combined with your statement, is enough for us to take action. You're a minor, and we have a duty to protect you. A police officer arrived to take my statement. Officer Chen was patient, letting me tell my story at my own pace. I told her about the laptop, but also about the other times, the borrowed birthday money, the destroyed art projects, the threats if I told anyone. Your mother's enabling behavior is part of the abuse, Officer Chen explained. She's failing to protect you, which makes her complicit. Meanwhile, Mom was getting increasingly agitated in the waiting room. I could hear her demanding to see me, insisting this was all a misunderstanding. We have options, Ms. Torres said. Your aunt in Portland is willing to take you in. We've already contacted her. Aunt Sarah, Mom's sister, would stop visiting after arguing with Mom about James's behavior. She'd seen through him years ago, but Mom had accused her of trying to divide the family. James will be arrested, Officer Chen added. With your documented injuries and statement, we have enough to charge him with assault. The next few hours passed in a blur. Mom finally burst into the room. But by then everything was in motion. She alternated between begging me to recant my statement and threatening me with family abandonment. How could you do this to your brother? She cried. He's had such a hard time since your father died. Mrs. Parker, Dr. Andrews interrupted firmly, your son has been systematically abusing your daughter. These x-rays show repeated trauma to her shoulder joint. This isn't sibling rivalry, it's assault. You don't understand our family, Mom shouted. I understand enough, he replied calmly. I understand that Emily needs protection, and if you won't provide it, we will. Officer Chen received word that James had been arrested at our house. They found my laptop in his car, along with receipts from a pawn shop showing a pattern of selling stolen items. Aunt Sarah was already on her way from Portland. Ms. Torres helped me pack a bag from home, accompanied by police officers who kept Mom at a distance while I gathered my belongings. This is temporary, Ms. Torres explained, just until we can ensure your safety and James gets the help he needs. Mom followed us around the house, switching between anger and pleading. Emily, please, he's your brother. We can work this out as a family. But looking at my bedroom, the broken lock, the missing valuables, the chair I pushed against the door at night, I knew there was no working it out. This wasn't family, this was survival. As we left the house, I saw James's car being towed away for evidence. Mom stood in the doorway, crying, but not reaching out to stop me. Maybe, somewhere deep down, she knew this had to happen. You did the right thing, Dr. Andrews told me before I left the hospital. It takes courage to break the silence. Remember that. In the social worker's car, heading to a temporary safe house to wait for Aunt Sarah, I touched my shoulder gently. For the first time in years, I felt something beyond the pain and fear. I felt hope. My phone buzzed with messages from Mom. Please come home. Don't destroy our family. James said he's sorry. I turned off my phone and watched the familiar streets disappear behind us. Sometimes I realize saving yourself means leaving behind the people who refuse to save you. 6 months later, I sat in a Portland courtroom, my Aunt Sarah's hand steady on my shoulder, my now healed shoulder. The judge was reviewing the evidence one last time before announcing James's sentence. My brother sat with his lawyer, looking smaller somehow without his usual intimidating presence. Dr. Andrews had flown in to testify, presenting my medical records and explaining the pattern of injuries he discovered. In my professional opinion, he'd stated firmly, these injuries were consistent with repeated intentional trauma, not accidents or rough play. Mom was there too, sitting behind James. She'd spent the last 6 months sending alternating messages of guilt and blame. I miss you, followed by how could you abandon your family? But living with Aunt Sarah had shown me what a healthy home felt like. One without fear, without missing belongings, without the need to barricade my door at night. The judge cleared his throat. James Parker, this court finds your actions particularly disturbing. You systematically abused your minor sister, using physical violence and intimidation to exploit her financially. The evidence shows a clear pattern of escalating violence that, left unchecked, could have resulted in even more serious injury. James was sentenced to 3 years in prison with mandatory counseling and anger management. The judge also made the restraining order permanent. He wouldn't be allowed near me until I was at least 21, and even then, only if I chose to allow contact. After the sentencing, Mom approached me in the courthouse hallway. She looked older, tired. "Emily," she said softly, "I'm sorry, I should have protected you." "Yes," I replied, "you should have." Aunt Sarah stepped between us. "Karen, Emily needs time. If she wants to work on your relationship, it'll be on her terms, not yours." My new life in Portland was everything I'd never dared hope for. I was finishing high school with straight A's, no longer missing classes because of accidents. My art teacher had entered my work in a state competition, and I'd won second place. Aunt Sarah had helped me open a new bank account only I could access, and I'd even started a part-time job at a local bookstore. Dr. Andrews kept in touch, sending occasional emails to check on my progress. His intervention had inspired me. I'd decided to study psychology in college, hoping to help other teenagers trapped in abusive situations. "You're thriving," my therapist Dr. Martinez noted during one of our weekly sessions. "But it's okay to still feel angry about what happened." "I'm not just angry," I admitted. "I'm grateful. Grateful to Dr. Andrews for seeing through the lies, grateful to Officer Chen for believing me, grateful to Aunt Sarah for giving me a real home." The nightmares about James had mostly stopped, though sometimes I still woke up checking my door's lock. But Aunt Sarah had installed a security system, and for the first time in years I felt safe in my bedroom. 1 year after that day in the ER, I received a letter from James in prison. Aunt Sarah offered to read it first, but I decided to open it myself. "Dear Emily, the counselors here are helping me understand what I did to you. I can't blame Dad's death or gambling addiction anymore. I hurt you repeatedly, and I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm working to change." I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer. Maybe someday I'd be ready to read the rest, but not yet. For now, I was focused on healing and building my future. Mom had started therapy too, finally confronting her role in enabling James' abuse. She'd sent a birthday card last month, not asking for anything, just saying she was proud of my art award and hoping I was happy. Standing in my room at Aunt Sarah's house, looking at my new art supplies and intact laptop, I touched my shoulder, once a symbol of fear, now a reminder of the day I found the courage to speak up. On my wall hung the framed quote Dr. Andrews had sent me. "Healing doesn't mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls your life." Later that week, I spoke at a hospital training session about recognizing signs of abuse. In the audience, I saw the same determination in the medical staff's eyes that I'd seen in Dr. Andrews's that day. The commitment to look deeper, to question the excuses, to help those who couldn't help themselves. Sometimes, I told them, saving someone is as simple as being the first person to say, "I don't believe this is an accident." Sometimes that's all it takes to break the cycle. As I left the hospital, my shoulders strong and straight, I smiled. James had tried to break me, but instead, he'd set me free. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us to our greatest strength, and mine had led me here, to a future I was finally free to choose. "Emma needs this space more than you," Linda announced, gesturing proudly at what used to be my home office. The walls, once lined with books and notes from my years of writing, were now an unsettling shade of pink, cluttered with baby furniture and pastel decorations. The space where I'd spent countless hours cracking my novel had been erased in my absence. I barely heard her next words over the buzzing in my ears. "She's having a baby after all. And you just sit here playing on your computer." I'm Alice Chin, and at 32, I never expected to return from a 3-day writer's retreat to find my office, my sanctuary, stripped away without my consent. My antique desk, the one that had belonged to my grandmother, was gone. My bookshelves, once meticulously organized, had been emptied to make room for stuffed animals and baby supplies. "Where are my things?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm rising inside me. "My manuscripts, my research notes, my grandmother's typewriter, Everything that mattered had disappeared. Linda waved a dismissive hand. Oh, we put all that junk in storage. Emma needed somewhere to stay while her house is being renovated. And since you're never going to have children anyway. She trailed off, her meaning clear. I clenched my fists, then forced them to relax. Behind her, Emma leaned against the doorframe, one hand resting smugly on her belly. She'd always been Linda's favorite. Marrying her son had never been enough to change that. Did Tom know about this? I asked, referring to my husband. Oh, he agreed completely, Linda lied smoothly. Her left eye twitched, the tell I picked up over 5 years of strained civility. He knows family comes first. I pulled out my phone and dialed Tom, putting him on speaker. Hey honey, how was the retreat? His voice was warm, oblivious. Get a lot of writing done. Tom, I said calmly, did you know your mother and sister converted my office into a nursery while I was gone? Silence. Then, they did what? Linda's smile faltered. Now, Tom, you know Emma needs. Mom, Tom's voice turned sharp. What are you doing in our house? Your sister needed a place to stay, Linda started, but he cut her off. You had no right to touch Alice's things. Either of you. Where's her grandmother's desk? Emma scoffed, her voice thick with condescension. It's in storage, Tom, and really, Alice never uses it. She talks about writing, but let's be honest, nothing's ever come of it. I actually need this space. A strange calm settled over me, the kind that comes with absolute clarity. Without a word, I walked to our bedroom and opened my laptop. Linda and Emma followed, still trying to justify their actions. You're being selfish, Alice, Linda scolded. Emma is family. She's carrying your niece or nephew. Surely your little hobby can wait. I clicked on an unread email and turned the screen toward them. The subject line read, Offer of publication The Silent House. My little hobby, I echoed softly. You mean the novel that just got picked up by Riverside Publishing? The color drained from their faces. Riverside was one of the biggest publishing houses in the country. Emma's hand dropped from her belly as she read the email, which included details about the substantial advance I'd been offered. But you never said anything, Linda stammered. I don't share everything with people who don't support me. My voice was calm, measured. Now, I'm calling the police to report an unauthorized entry and removal of property from my home. You wouldn't dare, Linda gasped. We're family. I dialed 911, holding her gaze as the call connected. Yes, I'd like to report a break-in and removal of property from my home. The fallout was almost comical. Linda and Emma scrambled to justify themselves to the officers, who looked thoroughly unimpressed with their excuses. Tom arrived home, his face dark with anger as he surveyed the damage. Where's the storage unit? He demanded. Linda hesitated before handing over the key. She couldn't meet his eyes. As the officers took statements, I settled onto the couch, opening my laptop to respond to my publisher's email. From the kitchen, I could hear Linda oscillating between defending herself and berating Emma for not warning her about my attitude problem. Alice doesn't appreciate what she has, she was muttering. She's not even trying to give Tom children. She had no idea. This wasn't just about my office. It wasn't just about my writing. This was about years of being dismissed, diminished, and undermined. Years of veiled insults and blatant boundary violations. But I learned something important. The best revenge isn't served hot with anger or cold with calculation. The best revenge is served with perfect timing. Tom returned with my grandmother's desk and my boxes of research. As he helped the officers document everything, I made another call. Hi, Sarah. It's Alice. Remember that offer about featuring local authors in your bookstore? I'm ready to take you up on that, and I have the perfect story to tell. Linda's head snapped up, her expression twisting in horror as realization dawned. She cared about nothing more than her reputation in our small town. And soon everyone would know exactly what she'd done. Not through gossip, not through accusations, but through the power of a story. And I'd spent years perfecting this one. The next few days unfolded like an unwritten sequel I never intended to draft. Tom spent hours meticulously restoring my office, repainting the walls in their original sage green, carefully positioning my grandmother's mahogany desk back by the window, and returning each book and manuscript to its rightful place. Meanwhile, Linda and Emma had gone radio silent. Not that it stopped the family gossip mill from churning. Word spread quickly, and soon I overheard whispers at the local cafe. "Can you believe Alice called the police?" Mrs. Peterson murmured to a friend over her coffee. Linda was only trying to help Emma. I simply smiled into my own cup and let them talk. The police report had been filed, every missing item documented. My lawyer advised me to keep thorough records, not because I planned to press charges, but because, sometimes, the best defense was airtight evidence. Tom, however, was livid. "I can't believe they did this," he said, sitting in my restored office, his fingers drumming against my desk. "Mom's always been pushy, but this is another level." I watched him for a moment before responding. "Is it? Or is this just the first time you're seeing it for what it is?" His brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Silently, I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a small notebook. Inside, I had documented every slight, every boundary crossed, every moment that had chipped away at my patience over the years. The time Linda accidentally spilled wine on my manuscript, the Christmas when Emma hijacked our anniversary dinner for her pregnancy announcement, the countless times they showed up uninvited, expecting me to drop everything. "This isn't just about an office, Tom. It's about respect." As he flipped through the pages, his expression darkened. "Why didn't you tell me?" I exhaled. "Would you have listened?" His silence was answer enough. The next morning, I received an email from my publisher, an invitation for a local book signing at Sarah's bookstore for The Silent House. My novel centered on navigating toxic family dynamics. I forwarded the email to Linda and Emma, not out of malice, but because I knew they'd hear about it anyway. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. Emma's message came first. "You're really going to air our family's dirty laundry in public? How dare you?" Then Linda, "If you publish that book, you'll destroy this family. Is that what you want?" I replied with the same response to both. "The book was written and accepted before you decided to redecorate my office. But thank you for the inspiration for the sequel." Tom let out a low whistle as he read over my shoulder. "You're not actually writing about them, are you?" I smirked. "No, but they don't know that." The next day, Linda showed up at our doorstep, her usual arrogance noticeably absent. She clutched her designer handbag like a lifeline. "We need to talk." I stepped aside, watching as she hesitated before sitting down on the couch, a stark contrast to the woman who had so confidently commandeered my office. "I may have overstepped," she admitted, though the words seemed to taste bitter in her mouth. "May have." She winced. "Okay, I did. But you have to understand, Emma's going through a tough time. Her husband's never home, the renovations are a mess. And that justifies breaking into our house and taking my belongings." "We didn't break in," she argued weakly. "We used the spare key. The one for emergencies," I reminded her. "Not for decorating without permission." She twisted her hands in her lap. "I just thought," she sighed. "It doesn't matter. Emma's found another place to stay, with Jennifer." "Good." Linda's gaze flickered toward my office, her real concern evident. "And about your book?" I met her stare. "Yes. Is it really about family relationships?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "It's about consequences, Linda. About what happens when people take too much and assume too much." She paled slightly. "I see." "Do you?" I rose, gesturing for her to follow me. "Come with me. I want to show you something." Reluctantly she did. In my office, I pulled out my grandmother's typewriter, the one they had so carelessly discarded. This belonged to my grandmother. She used it to write letters to my grandfather during the war. Letters about love, family, respect. Before she passed, she told me something I've never forgotten. Words have power. They can build bridges or burn them down. Choose wisely what you want to do. Linda's gaze flickered between me and the typewriter, her fingers gripping the strap of her handbag. "Are you threatening us?" "No," I said evenly. "I'm reminding you that actions have consequences. Words have power, and some stories need to be told." She left shortly after, her usual self-importance noticeably shaken. As I watched her car disappear down the street, Tom wrapped an arm around my waist. "You know," he mused, "I don't think I've ever seen my mother scared before." I leaned into him. "She's not scared of me, Tom. She's scared of the truth. And maybe that's exactly what she needs." The story wasn't over yet. But for the first time since I'd returned home to find my space violated, I felt like I was finally the one holding the pen. Because Emma and Linda had tried to erase me from their narrative. A month after the office incident, I stood at the podium in Sarah's bookstore, scanning the crowd gathered for my book launch. The Silent House had already garnered glowing early reviews, praised for its layered exploration of family dynamics and the quiet toxicity that often hides in plain sight. In the front row, Tom sat with his usual steadfast support, his pride evident in the way he watched me. A few rows back, I spotted Linda and Emma. They hadn't been invited, but they were here nonetheless, sitting stiffly, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. I adjusted the microphone and smiled. Thank you all for being here. This book is about finding your voice when others try to silence you. About holding your ground when others insist you don't belong. In the audience, Linda shifted uncomfortably. As I read a few selected passages, I watched their tension gradually ease. The protagonist, a young woman navigating her husband's possessive family, was wrapped in a gothic, supernatural world, making it clear this was fiction. Still, the themes lingered close enough to reality to leave an imprint. After the reading, during the signing, Emma approached hesitantly. Her pregnancy had progressed, and she looked uncomfortable in more ways than one. Alice, she said softly, I need to apologize. I set my pen down and met her gaze. What we did, what I let Mom convince me to do, it was wrong. I was so caught up in my own problems that I never stopped to think about how it affected you. And now? She placed a protective hand over her belly. Now I'm about to have a daughter, and I keep thinking about what I want to teach her about respect. About boundaries. I wouldn't want her to believe it's okay to take from others just because someone tells her she deserves it more. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was something. Later, after most of the crowd had trickled out, Linda approached. She stood before my table, gripping a copy of my book. Would you sign it? She asked. Her voice, for once, carried no authority, only something quieter, something real. I opened the book to the dedication page, where I had written, "For my grandmother, who taught me that the strongest walls aren't built of stone, but of self-respect." Linda read the words, then lifted her gaze to meet mine. I spent so much time trying to fit you into the space I thought you should occupy, she admitted, that I never noticed the space you were creating for yourself. I signed her copy with a simple message. Sometimes, the best family stories are the ones we choose to write ourselves. In the following weeks, Emma moved into her friend Jennifer's guest house, and Linda stopped using her emergency key altogether. Tom installed a security system, not because we needed it now, but because boundaries, once broken, deserved to be reinforced. My office remained my sanctuary, its sage green walls and my grandmother's desk a quiet testament to the power of standing firm. The typewriter rested on its shelf, waiting for the next. One evening, as I sat at my desk, Tom brought me a cup of tea and handed me a small package that had arrived in the mail. Inside was a handmade baby blanket and a note from Emma. For your office, not as a nursery, but as a reminder that family can grow in unexpected ways when we give each other room to be ourselves. I draped the blanket over the reading chair in the corner, letting it settle into place, not as a symbol of loss, or of what others had assumed I should want, but of something else entirely, of what can be rebuilt when respect replaces entitlement. Linda and Emma never tried to reclaim my space again. The call came during my lunch break at the hospital. Mrs. Bennett, this is Principal Hayes from Riverside Elementary. There's a situation with Lucas. Could you come in right away? My pulse spiked. Years in the ER had taught me how to handle crises. But when it came to my 7-year-old son, logic went out the window. Is Lucas okay? He's safe, the principal assured me, though something in her tone made my stomach twist. But we have someone here claiming to be his mother. Given the intensity of the situation, we'd appreciate your immediate presence. I went cold. I already knew who it was. She says her name is Rebecca Bennett. Rebecca, my sister-in-law. Of course. I was already grabbing my bag. Do not let her take him anywhere. I have sole custody. His records confirm it. 20 minutes later, I stormed through Riverside Elementary's doors, still in my scrubs. Through the office window, I spotted Rebecca pacing, heels clicking against the tile, her perfectly styled blonde hair bouncing with each agitated turn. She was in one of her usual look how composed I am outfits, probably hoping to contrast with my work uniform. Principal Hayes met me at the entrance, her expression tight. Mrs. Bennett, Sarah, thank you for coming so quickly. This is unprecedented. Where's Lucas? Safe in the counselor's office. We followed custody dispute protocols, but she hesitated. Your sister-in-law's claims are unusual. Rebecca turned at the sound of my voice. Her sharp blue eyes narrowed. Finally, she declared, Tell them, Sarah. Tell them how you've been playing mother with my son. The words hit like a slap, but I kept my voice even. Rebecca, what are you doing? Reclaiming what's mine, she said, chin high, tone dripping with self-righteousness. Lucas belongs with his real mother. You've had him long enough. Principal Hayes cleared her throat. Mrs. Bennett, Rebecca, our records show Sarah as Lucas's legal parent and sole guardian. Documents can be faked, Rebecca snapped. I gave birth to him. I just let Sarah raise him while I was away. But I'm back, and I want my son. The absurdity would have been laughable if it weren't so disturbing. Rebecca, I said carefully, you were at my baby shower. You held my hand in the delivery room. More lies, she hissed. You turned everyone against me. Even my own nephew doesn't recognize me because of your manipulation. Principal Hayes touched my arm. Sarah, given the situation, we may need to call the police. No need, Rebecca interjected, pulling out her phone. My lawyer will clear this up. Then, her gaze darkened. Did you think you could just steal my life? First my brother, then my son. That's when I saw it, her hands shaking, a slight slur in her words. Was she drunk? On something? This was worse than I thought. I have the birth certificate, I said firmly. Hospital records. Pregnancy photos. Lucas's entire life is documented. Fabricated. Her voice rose. You're nothing but a glorified babysitter. Lucas deserves his real mother, not some overworked nurse. The disdain in her voice when she said nurse was unmistakable. Rebecca had always looked down on my career, as if Scrubs made me less of a Bennett. I exhaled slowly. The school has cameras, Rebecca. They've recorded everything. Do you really want to continue with these claims? She faltered, just for a second. Then, rallying, cameras don't prove who gave birth. I have. Memories. Evidence. Mrs. Bennett, Principal Hayes said, her patience thinning. If you continue this, we'll have no choice but to involve law enforcement. Rebecca's face twisted. You're all against me, just like everyone else. But I'll prove it. I'll show you all. She grabbed her bag, stormed toward the door, then turned back, eyes burning. This isn't over, Sarah. Lucas belongs with me, you'll see. As the door slammed shut behind her, Principal Hayes let out a breath. In 20 years, I've never seen anything like that. Should we call the police? I nodded, adrenaline wearing off as my hands started to shake. Yes, and I need to call my lawyer. Something is seriously wrong. She's never claimed to be Lucas's mother before. Mom? I turned. Lucas stood in the doorway, hair rumpled, his small face tight with confusion. Was that Aunt Rebecca? She was saying weird things. I pulled him close, breathing in his familiar scent of crayons and grape juice. Yes, honey, Aunt Rebecca isn't feeling well right now, but everything's okay. But as I held my son, I knew this was far from over. Rebecca was unraveling, and whatever came next, I had to be ready. The next few days blurred into a storm of legal meetings and security upgrades. Maria Gonzalez, my lawyer, wasted no time cutting to the heart of the matter. Rebecca's actions at the school constitute attempted custodial interference, he said, her eyes scanning the security footage on her laptop. The cameras caught everything, her false claims, her erratic behavior, and what looks like intoxication. We can file for a restraining order immediately. I pressed my fingers to my temple, exhausted. But why now? Why claim to be Lucas's mother after 7 years? Maria shut her laptop with a decisive click. From what you've told me about her divorce and behavior changes, she could be having some kind of breakdown. But our priority is keeping Lucas safe. That evening, as I helped Lucas with his homework, my phone buzzed. A text from my former mother-in-law, Patricia. Rebecca showed up at my house. She's making wild claims about Lucas. What is going on? Before I could respond, another message appeared. She has hospital photos. She says they're from Lucas's birth. Sarah, I'm worried about her. A cold weight settled in my chest as I called Patricia. She answered on the first ring. Sarah, thank God. Rebecca's not making sense. She showed me these photos, but they're clearly edited. Patricia, she went to Lucas's school claiming she was his mother. We're involving lawyers now. Silence. Then, a quiet, shaken breath. Oh dear God. I was afraid something like this might happen. Since her divorce, she's been different, fixated on family, like she's trying to rewrite history. What do you mean? Patricia hesitated. She turned her guest room into a nursery, started collecting baby clothes, toys. I thought maybe she was considering adoption, but now. The chill in my spine turned to ice. Patricia, listen to me. She could try to take Lucas. I know, dear. That's why I called. She made copies of all our old family photos, even the ones from when you were pregnant. I think she's altering them. After we hung up, I went straight to Lucas's room. He was curled up on his bed, flipping through the photo album I'd made him, the one filled with memories of his dad. Mom, his voice was small. Why did Aunt Rebecca say she's my real mom? You told me about the day I was born. Dad took so many pictures. I sat beside him, wrapping my arm around his shoulders. Sometimes grown-ups get confused when they're going through something hard. But no matter what Aunt Rebecca says, the truth doesn't change. You grew in my belly, and your dad was so excited to meet you that he took hundreds of pictures. Lucas chewed his lip. Is she gonna try to take me away? My heart twisted. No, sweetheart. Never. I promise. But that night, long after Lucas had fallen asleep, an email arrived that made my blood run cold. From Rebecca Bennett. Subject: Proud oath. I'm taking back what's mine. Attached were dozens of altered photos, my pregnancy pictures, my hospital moments, all of them clumsily manipulated. My face erased, replaced with hers. I forwarded everything to Maria. Her response came within minutes. Save everything. Document everything. I'm filing the restraining order first thing tomorrow. The next morning, I dropped Lucas off at school, double-checking with the office that no one but me was allowed to pick him up. As I walked back to my car, I noticed a silver Mercedes idling across the street. Rebecca. She rolled down the window, a slow, deliberate movement. Her smile was all sharp edges. You can't keep him from me forever, Sarah. I have proof now. Everyone will see the truth. Rebecca, you need help. These delusions about Lucas. Delusions? She laughed, the sound brittle, unhinged. I have evidence. Photos. Documentation. Even a DNA test. My stomach dropped. What DNA test? Her grin widened. Amazing what you can do with a strand of hair and a private lab. Results should be in any day now. Then everyone will know you're the liar. I pulled out my phone and hit record. So you're admitting to illegally obtaining my son's DNA. Rebecca's expression twisted in rage. My son. Mine. She threw the car into gear and sped off, tires screeching. I called Maria immediately. She stole a DNA sample from Lucas, I said, my voice shaking. She's planning to use it against me. That's illegal, Maria said sharply, and it strengthens our case. This is escalating fast. Has she been following you? I thought of the silver Mercedes that had appeared far too often lately. Yes, I think so. Document everything. Take photos when you see her car. Save every message. We need to shut this down before she does something worse. She was right, because that afternoon the school called again. Rebecca had tried to pick up Lucas. She had stormed into the front office, waving what she claimed were court documents. Thankfully, the staff followed protocol and refused to release him. By the time I arrived, Lucas was in tears. She yelled at Ms. Thompson. He sobbed into my shirt, said she was calling the police. Mom, I'm scared. I held him tight, swallowing down my own fear. The school is keeping you safe, honey, and I promise I won't let anything happen to you. As we walked to the car, I noticed a manila envelope tucked under my windshield wiper. Inside were more altered photos, and a note scrawled in Rebecca's sharp, slanted handwriting. I can prove he's mine. Just wait for the DNA test. Then everyone will know what you did. You stole my life, Sarah. My brother, my son, everything. But I'm taking it back. All of it. I took pictures of everything before sealing the contents in an evidence bag, just as Maria had advised. Rebecca was unraveling, and fast. And I had a terrible, sinking feeling that the worst was still coming. Because somewhere, in the shadows of her twisted mind, Rebecca was already putting a far more dangerous plan into motion, one that would force me to make an impossible choice to protect my son. Here's the rewritten version of your story segment with a stronger emotional pull and smoother pacing. 3 days later, everything came crashing down. I was halfway through my night shift when my phone erupted with notifications, security alerts, frantic texts from my neighbor, and a voicemail from the police. My stomach dropped. Rebecca had broken into my house. The security footage told the story in eerie silence. At 2 a.m., she slipped through a back window, moving cautiously toward Lucas's room. A backpack slung over her shoulder, papers clutched in her hand. But she hadn't accounted for the silent alarms. The moment she stepped inside, the system alerted both me and my neighbor, a retired cop who had been keeping an eye out. She called 911 before Rebecca could take another step. The police arrived just in time. They found her standing beside Lucas's bed, reaching for him. By the time the officers burst in, she was clutching her fake documents, screaming her delusions to the world. "He's my son. I have proof. Look at the DNA test." By the time I made it home, the flashing red and blue lights bathed my house in harsh reality. Inside, Officer Martinez briefed me as I stared at the pile of evidence on my kitchen counter: altered birth certificates, forged custody papers, and a shoddy Photoshop attempt at a DNA test. "She's being held for attempted kidnapping," Martinez said. "And given her condition, a psychiatric evaluation is in motion." Lucas had slept through it all, oblivious to how close danger had come. But the next morning, over breakfast, he frowned at the lingering police presence outside. "Mom," his voice was small. "Why were the police here?" I forced a smile, brushing his hair back. "Just making sure we're safe, sweetheart." Maria called soon after. "Rebecca's officially undergoing psychiatric evaluation." Patricia gave a statement detailing her erratic behavior. "With the stalking, break-in, and fake documents, it's clear she's been spiraling for a long time." "Will she go to jail?" "More likely, she'll be committed for treatment. And a restraining order. It's permanent." Later that day, Patricia visited. She looked older, the weight of everything pressing down on her. "I should have seen it sooner," she murmured, watching Lucas play in the backyard. After her divorce, she kept talking about reclaiming what was rightfully hers. "I thought she meant her marriage. I never imagined. She was always jealous," she continued. "Of you, of David, of the life you built. When David died, it was like she couldn't stand that you still had a piece of him." She convinced herself that taking Lucas would fix something inside her. The weeks that followed were a blur of court dates, legal filings, and psychiatric assessments. Rebecca was officially diagnosed with a severe mental break and committed to a facility. The restraining order was upheld. The fake documents and stalking attempts, hard evidence of her unraveling state, ensured she wouldn't be able to come near Lucas again. Months passed. The fear slowly ebbed, replaced by routine and cautious relief. Then, 6 months later, I got a letter from Rebecca's therapist. She wanted to apologize. Maria and I discussed it at length, and in the end, I agreed to a supervised video call. Rebecca looked different, smaller somehow, stripped of the manic energy that once fueled her obsession. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet. "I'm sorry," she said, eyes downcast. "I know now that what I did was wrong. After my divorce, watching you raise David's son, it consumed me. I convinced myself that taking Lucas would fix everything. But I wasn't well. I swallowed hard. You could have taken him that night." Her face crumpled. "I know, and I will never forgive myself for that. It wasn't a perfect ending. There was no neat resolution to undo the past. But as the months stretched into years, Rebecca stayed in treatment and eventually moved out of state, starting fresh somewhere far away. Lucas still asks about her sometimes. I tell him the truth that his Aunt Rebecca got very sick, but is getting the help she needs. The security cameras still record. The alarms still stand ready, but now they're just precautions, not lifelines. Because in the end, love, real love, not obsession, proved stronger than any lie, stronger than fear. Lucas is 10 now, and sometimes when I see him smile, his father's smile, I remind myself of this. We don't protect the ones we love by holding them too tightly. We protect them by standing strong, by choosing truth over fear, and by never letting the past dictate the future. Painting won't pay bills. Gloria sneered from the doorway of my studio, her manicured nails tapping impatiently against the frame. "When are you going to grow up and get a real job?" Something my James deserves. I didn't look up, carefully layering shadows on the mountain peaks in front of me. 5 years of marriage had trained me to tune her out, to let her words slide off like rain against stone. My name is Elena Martinez, and at 32, I had spent the last decade building a life Gloria Richardson would never understand. To her, I was just a disappointment, a woman who played with paints instead of securing a proper corporate career like her golden boy, James. She stepped into my space, uninvited, the click of her designer heels sharp against the hardwood floor. You know, Elena, I saw a wonderful position at James's firm. A respectable office job. It would do you some good. I set my brush down and exhaled slowly. I appreciate your concern, Gloria, but I'm happy with my art. She scoffed, plucking up one of my smaller canvases like it was a piece of discarded junk mail. Happy doesn't pay for the lifestyle my son deserves. This, she waved a dismissive hand at my studio. This is a hobby. A woman should contribute to her household, not hide in here like a child. If only she knew. For years, I had been selling my paintings under a pseudonym, building a reputation that would make her pearls clutch themselves. But James insisted we keep it quiet. Mom's traditional, honey, she wouldn't understand. Gloria's gaze swept the room with thinly veiled disdain. My sanctuary, a converted garage bathed in golden afternoon light, filled with the scent of oils and turpentine, was just another thing she saw as disposable. At least you could paint something pretty, she mused, gesturing vaguely at my current piece. People like flowers, something tasteful, something that actually sells. I almost laughed. The moody landscape she dismissed so easily had a waiting list of collectors. My work under E.M. Rivers hung in galleries across the country. Passion is nice, she continued, her voice syrupy with condescension, but it doesn't put food on the table. James works so hard, and what do? Lock yourself away with paintbrushes like some dreamy little girl. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A message from my gallery. Major collector interested in your mountain series, 7-figure offer, call ASAP. I slid my phone back into my pocket, suppressing a smile. Gloria hadn't noticed. She was too busy straightening her blouse, preparing to deliver her final decree. James and I have been talking about your situation, she said, satisfaction dripping from every syllable. This needs to stop, Elena. It's time you joined the real world. I froze. My situation? He agrees with me, she said triumphantly. This little hobby of yours is holding both of you back. He could have been partner by now if he didn't have to explain why his wife spends all day playing with paints instead of having a proper career. A slow, cold anger settled in my chest. James and I would be having a conversation later. My art is my career, Gloria. She laughed. Oh please, when was the last time you actually sold anything? And those little commission pieces for your friends don't count. I stared at her, debating whether to tell her about the collectors in New York, the auction sales, or the private buyer in Paris who had just commissioned an entire series. But James had always insisted, it's easier than dealing with my mother. I do all right, I said simply. Her expression darkened, not for much longer. James has agreed. This space will make the perfect home office for him. Somewhere professional. You'll need to clear it out by the weekend. I went still. This is my studio, I said carefully. Was your studio, she corrected, smiling. We've already ordered his new furniture. 5 years of biting my tongue. Of compromise. Of letting Gloria belittle my passion because James swore it was better than causing drama. In that moment, it all became clear. No, I said quietly. Her head snapped up. Excuse me? I said no. I met her gaze, unflinching. This is my space, my career. And you have no right to make decisions about it. Her face twisted with rage. After everything I've done for you, you are exactly why James could have done better. She stormed forward, grabbing a finished canvas, one from the very series the collector wanted. Before I could stop her, she hurled it to the ground. The sharp edge of the easel tore through the fabric. Gloria. She didn't stop. She reached for another painting, her breath coming in furious huffs. If you won't listen to reason, she snarled, then maybe it's time for some tough love. I stood frozen as my mother-in-law, so proud, so refined, so desperate for control, began ripping through my work like a storm. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly fathom, was that she wasn't just destroying hobby paintings. She was tearing through pieces worth thousands, some worth tens of thousands. And every second of her tantrum was being recorded by the security cameras I had installed to protect my very valuable work. I pulled out my phone and hit record, documenting the wreckage firsthand. Sometimes revenge isn't about shouting. Sometimes it's just about letting people reveal exactly who they are. Finally, she stopped, panting, surrounded by the ruins of what she thought was just a silly little dream. "Now," she announced, smoothing her blouse, "you can focus on being the kind of wife my son deserves." I met her gaze calmly, then pressed send on the video. "Thank you, Gloria." Her expression flickered. "For what?" I smiled. "For showing me exactly who you are. Now would you like to know exactly who I am?" Gloria's smug satisfaction at wrecking my studio didn't last long. My phone buzzed relentlessly, and I put the call on speaker, letting her hear every word. Rivers, this is Marcus from Hostin Gallery. The collector is ready to wire the 7-figure payment for the Mountain series. When can we arrange pickup?" Gloria's face drained of color as I replied, calm but deliberate. "We have a problem, Marcus. Several pieces from the series were just destroyed, intentionally. I have video proof." A stunned silence, then Marcus's voice sharpened. "Destroyed? Those works are insured for millions. Who would?" I turned to Gloria, now sinking into my paint-splattered chair, hands trembling. My mother-in-law wanted to teach me a lesson about what real women do for a living. Her lips parted, barely a whisper escaping. Rivers? You're Ian Rivers?" I nodded, still addressing Marcus. "Send the insurance adjusters. I'll forward the footage." After ending the call, I faced Gloria fully. "Yes, I'm Ian Rivers. The artist whose painting sold for $300,000 last month. The one whose work hangs in museums. The one whose little hobby pays for that luxury car you love to brag about James driving." She stammered. But that's impossible. Rivers is. Is what, Gloria? Successful? Professional? A real career? I gestured to the shredded canvases littering the floor. "You just destroyed roughly $2 million worth of art. Art that was already sold. Art that was insured." Her voice barely held. "James never told me." I exhaled, shaking my head. "Because he knew you'd never respect it. He thought keeping the peace was easier than dealing with your judgment. And I went along with it." I laughed bitterly. We see how well that worked out. My phone buzzed again. Messages from the insurance company. They were sending someone immediately. I forwarded the footage while Gloria watched, horrified. "Elena, I didn't know," she whispered. "No, you didn't bother to know. You were too busy forcing your narrow definition of womanhood onto me." Desperate, she grasped at straws. "We can fix this. James and I will make it right." I arched a brow. "With what money, Gloria? These pieces were worth more than your house." She smoothed her expensive blouse with shaking hands. "You can't tell James. It would break his heart." I let out a slow breath, leveling my gaze at her. "Break his heart? Like how you two planned to take away my studio? Like how you've spent years belittling my career while living off its success?" The security system chimed, insurance adjusters, along with Marcus. As they documented the wreckage, their expressions turned grave. "This is deliberate destruction," one adjuster noted. "The insurance company will demand full restitution." Gloria's face crumpled. "Elena, please, I'm James's mother. You can't do this to me." I met her pleading eyes with quiet finality. "I'm not doing anything to you, Gloria. You did this to yourself." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, staring at the torn canvases. "The collector will be devastated. These were meant to be the centerpiece of their new museum wing." Gloria blinked, stunned. "Museum wing?" "Yes, Gloria. That moody landscape series you mocked. It was commissioned for the Modern Art Museum's new Natural Light exhibition. They've been promoting it for months." The weight of her actions finally hit. Her carefully constructed poise shattered, mascara streaked tears trailing down her cheeks. "What can I do? There must be something." I exhaled steady. "Start by leaving my studio. The insurance company will handle the rest. And Gloria?" I held her gaze. "Don't ever tell me what a real woman does again." She fled. Marcus lingered. "Elena, I'm so sorry. The collector will want answers." I surveyed the wreckage, my mind already working. "Tell them I'll create something new. Better. Sometimes destruction leads to inspiration." After they left, I sat alone, surrounded by the remains of years of work. My phone lit up, a message from James. Mom called crying. What happened? I inhaled deeply and typed. Come home. We need to talk about why you told your mother she could turn my studio into your office, and why you've spent years hiding my success. His response came fast. I was trying to protect you from her. No, you were protecting her from reality, and in doing so, you let this happen. I looked at the devastation around me, and strangely, I felt free. No more hiding. No more minimizing my success for someone else's comfort. As I started cleaning, I noticed something that made me smile. The large canvas I'd been working on, the one Gloria sneered at, had survived untouched. Sometimes the universe has a sense of irony. A final message lit up my screen, this one from the museum curator. Heard what happened? Don't worry about the series. We want a new commission about transformation and resilience. Your price, your timeline. I stared at the words, then at my studio, and felt a familiar spark of inspiration. Gloria thought she'd destroyed my art, but all she'd done was give me something more powerful to say. As the sun set through the shattered space, I heard James's car pull into the driveway. Another hard conversation was coming. But I was ready. No more hiding. No more compromising. No more letting anyone else define my worth. That evening, standing in the ruins of my studio, I watched James take in the wreckage. His expression shifted from shock to anger, then finally shame. He ran a hand through his hair, his fingers tightening around a shredded canvas. I never thought she'd actually do this, he murmured. When she mentioned converting the studio, I don't know what I thought. You thought it was easier to placate her than to stand up to her, I said, my voice steady. Just like it was easier to downplay my career than force her to see me for who I really am. James exhaled sharply. I'll make this right. I'll make sure she pays for everything, the damages, the commissions. She can't afford it, I interrupted. And even if she could, that's not the point. His eyes met mine. Then what is? This isn't about money, James. It's about the fact that you spent years protecting her feelings at the expense of my dignity. I gestured to the destroyed canvases around us. How long were you going to let her believe I was just playing around? How long were you going to let her belittle me? The silence that followed stretched between us, heavy with everything we'd never said. I thought I was keeping the peace, he admitted finally. I never meant for this to happen. I know, I said, but it did. And now we have to decide where we go from here. In the weeks that followed, things changed fast. The insurance claim was settled quickly, thanks to the security footage. Gloria faced not only financial consequences, but public fallout as well. Word spread fast in the art world. Meanwhile, my identity as Ian Rivers became public knowledge, triggering a wave of interviews, features, and new opportunities. The museum that had commissioned the Mountain series pivoted, commissioning a new collection, this time on destruction and resilience. They even planned to display footage of Gloria's rampage alongside my new work, turning an act of destruction into a statement on transformation. James moved out for a while, saying he needed time to rethink everything. I let him. I had work to do. The new pieces that emerged from the wreckage were different, raw, powerful. They told a story of breaking free, of rising from ruins. 3 months later, as I put the finishing touches on my newly renovated studio, Gloria showed up unannounced. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of her own actions had finally settled on her shoulders. The insurance company is garnishing my wages, she said without preamble. It'll take me years to pay back the damages. I didn't look up from my work. That sounds about right. I've been in therapy, she continued, trying to understand why I needed to control everything. Why I did. What I did. She swallowed hard. I'm sorry, Elena, not just for this, but for all of it. I set my brush down and finally met her gaze. I appreciate that. But you know words aren't enough, right? She nodded, her eyes wet. I saw your new work. The magazine feature. It's incredible. I never let myself see it before. But now I get it. I get why people love it so much. I glanced at the painting in front of me, a phoenix rising from a canvas that had been torn and reassembled. Sometimes we have to lose everything to finally see what was there all along. She left quietly, and I returned to my work. That night, James called. Can I come to the opening? He asked. Not as your protector, just as someone who believes in you. The next evening, the exhibition debuted to record-breaking success. The gallery buzzed with energy, collectors drawn to the raw, defiant beauty of the new series. The story of destruction and rebirth resonated with them. But more importantly, it resonated with me. Gloria had tried to define what a real woman should be. But in trying to tear me down, she had only given me my greatest inspiration. As I stood in my studio later that night, watching the last rays of sunlight streak across my work, I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not resentment. Just gratitude. For my strength, for my voice, and even in some strange way for Gloria, who had tried to erase me, but instead helped me paint the clearest picture of who I truly was.